This next little video is all about paper, so how paper informs. Hey folks, welcome to another episode, I guess. We're going to be looking at stretching paper today and why it's important to stop your paper buckling if you were using a wet medium like an ink or some watercolour. Once you're trying to do a drawing and get you don't want that paper to buckle. And we're going to kind of go through a couple of steps why, alongside the importance of different paper weights and how you might draw on different papers for different reasons. So, you know, drawing on a card versus a watercolour piece of paper on cartridge paper or even bond paper all have different purposes for how you want to operate and what type of drawing you want to do. And these are these sort of traditional skill sets as opposed to the digital where you're simulating them on an iPad, really. Some inks here and some different types of paper to show you. There's lots of different types of paper and when it comes to drawing, paper can really be the other part of the story that you don't think about. So we've got some toned grey paper here, so that's if you wanted to start using some white pencil to work on. You've got watercolour paper, and one of the things I really want to draw your attention to is something called GSM. Alright, it's not MSG. So if we had something like this type of watercolour paper, the Mikador, it's a nice really thick card that's 300 GSM. So I've got Winsor & Newton Black Indian ink. It's kind of your traditional go-to, and I have some two different inks from Venice, and one is a blue ink and one is a black ink, and that is, you know, Nero for black and blue for blue. So these I just cracked these open today, so the first time we're going to use them. See? So I've got those two sitting there, and what we've got is some masking tape. Alright, some cardboard masking tape. You can see there's a line there, so one side of this has an adhesive to it, and this is important for when you might want to, it's what we call stretching the paper. So the fibres and the tissues within the paper buckle when they hit water. So if I just tore off a little section of it and dipped it into this water here, you're going to see that paper buckle when it dries again. So what you want to try and avoid is this process happening when you add a wet medium like ink or a watercolour as well, so that you don't get that buckle happening. Now we can do this by essentially bathing the whole sheet of paper in water and stretching it out on a board. And in order to stretch it out, we use one of these rolls. So you can see the shiny side there, that glue that I can use to strap it down on a board. So cartridge paper is usually around 120 GSM. Your watercolours range from about 185 GSM all the way through to 400, 500, 700 GSM, and that really you start getting towards a card. So this is 300 GSM, this is about 320, just a Stonehenge or an Arches, and really you can get a rougher texture on your paper or a smooth texture on your paper, and one side is always a little bit rougher than the other when you want a really, really smooth paper, and people just want them for different reasons. So this can come in our essentially every single journal that you might get has a different range of paper weight as well. So this one here is just one that I'd started recently, just mucking around trying to get ideas for thinking about this course. You can see for the love of drawing, and some different styles of doing realism versus other. But what you'll see is when I turn this, it's quite a thick card, and we're looking at here at about 180 GSM, similar to the watercolor paper over here. So I'm just going to, and I applied something. If I apply the same, you're going to see that paper buckle if it can't hold the weight. And the thing is, if you put and you keep pushing the ink onto it, and you can already see it happening, if I was to put more and more and more on, so that the paper gets really loaded up like this, it's going to buckle, and it won't actually go back into its original. It's essentially taking this and completely soaking the paper, right, so that it's saturated, right, making sure it's fully saturated, all the parts of it are wet, right, so that those fibers can release and get rid of the excess. And then what I want to do is strap it down to my board, right? So the water should kind of, the whole thing saturated, all the pigments are operating that way, so that we can reduce the amount of spread of a wet medium. So if I just take a little bit of my masking, come on. Right, you can see that shiny side. I'm not even going to use the scissors. You can see that shiny side in operation, right? We're wetting the same to activate the glue. You can feel it sliming up on the other side, and then we can put it down. Now you're going to lose some of the edge of your paper when you're doing this process of masking it, and this is really just preparing a piece of paper so that it won't buckle when you do add the mediums later. It's not sitting, there's no buckling happening underneath. You've just got to be careful that your hands are kind of clean so that you're not peeling the paper. And basically once we've got it like this, you just have to wait for it to dry. And once that glue dries in, you can still see it buckling a little bit. Okay, so this is a painting, a watercolor painting that I was working on last year that I kind of just stopped working on, but you can see that I haven't actually stretched this paper, and with the quality of the paper itself, if you're not heaping too much water on it constantly, then you will find that you won't have a problem. But stretching that paper is really just useful to know that it won't buckle. Okay. So now that we have it dried, I've dried it with a blow dryer on a cool setting, so that it didn't sort of burn the paper. The glue's still a little bit wet on the outside, but the paper's kind of dry. And what's happened here is essentially the fibers in the paper have stretched, and then they're stuck to the board, so that they can't move anymore. So it means that once you do a a piece of work on it and put some wet material on it, it's going to be stuck in that position until you really cut it out. So I've just got some, I'm going to try it with a little bit of the blue ink. So this is a nice little ink well that I usually do this in the studio, not on my coffee table, but it's a beautiful colour. Coloured ink, you can just look at that, the colour of the ocean. So usually what you can do with, with the page here is, let's just say I'm just going to do some different marks, not actually anything figurative, right, just so that you can see how that blue ink reacts to the water. So if the paper is still wet, you're going to see it sort of go into the paper without stretching it too much, right? So got this beautiful, beautiful blue ink. Now if I wanted to do what we call wet on wet, that means that we wet the paper first. So let's say I created the paper to be wet again now after it's dried, and then I stick my ink on. You're going to see it move and operate within the water. And what's really interesting is that it will not go outside the areas that are wet when you're doing this. And this is kind of the same for watercolour as well. But what you'll see is that it won't go outside to the dry paper, this bit here. And then you can get all those different tonal weights from your ink as well, right? So if I want it to be darker, I'm going in, and you can, again with the brush, start to get a sense of control, so that you could come in and do really fine lines like that, and use a whole bunch of different techniques in applying and doing different marks, whether it just be doing something like stippling with the brush, right? So fine line between painting and using ink with the brush. So this is a calligraphy brush again. If I use it with the blue ink, you get this beautiful So that's been like a really quick guide to stretching paper, so that you could start to put wet media onto the paper without having it doing that buckling process. If we come back to our other one without my inky mess everywhere, you can actually see how that paper has stayed buckled as opposed to when this dries. I've waited for this to dry overnight. Used a hairdryer yesterday, but thought I'd just leave it. And what we've got is our normal scalpel and then a ruler. And basically what you need to do, if you can't get this to peel off, is essentially cut it out. I'm gonna see if I can. No, I can't. So what you want to do is take your scalpel or whatever you have available, and then cut it off our board. So, whoa! It's alright. If you've got a long enough ruler, that's usually better, but I don't have a longer one at the moment. what you're going to see, hopefully see, is because we had stretched the paper, then added the blue, what's happened is it's still straight, right? So there's no buckling that's occurred on any of the paper once we added that wet. And now even if we were to go into it a little bit more with more ink, you would find that it would be very resistant to continuing buckling. So anyway, that's how you stretch paper.